Sic Semper Tyrannis, or in English, thus always the tyrants. Now, in a way, we're almost programmed to be against tyrants, which, for stories, naturally makes a tyrant the natural antagonist. As in, like, okay, I have the protagonist, but I need someone for them to go up against. Okay, we'll just have this person be called a tyrant, and then that sells it. But yet, just calling someone a tyrant may not actually be enough in a sense, because the word has kind of lost a bit of its meaning these days. And that's often because of the different perspectives that can surround it. And so in this video, I'll be talking a bit about that. But let's get into the basic conflict that is often involved in confronting a tyrant, which is basically the conflict between freedom versus control. Now, almost naturally, most of us will say, oh, we're for freedom, liberty, justice, all those kinds of things that we just associate with it. But yet, control is like something else. Because in a sense, whereas many people will often say, oh, I'm for freedom, a lot of people actually want control in a sense. They want to have consistency, they want to have safety, they want to have security, they want to have all those kind of things. They want to have order in their lives almost. And so control, when it comes, often doesn't strike the chord as being wrong to them in a sense. Especially since they can see freedom as being dangerous or chaotic and not how they would live and so forth and so on. And then sometimes that is because they actually don't like what other people are doing, so naturally control appeals to them more. And that kind of becomes most of the plot in that a tyrant is almost generally someone who is telling people what to do or what they can't do. Like, we could often see the classic tyrant as being someone who is asking the people to build their empire for them, or, well, telling them to build the empire, or enlisting in the army, or basically informing the people that they will now be a curfew in place, or they can't leave the city, or whatever it is. And so we think of those actions as being of a tyrant. But again, basically the conflict comes from someone asking, why can't I? Or why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And so that is where the line blurs and the word tyrant kind of loses its meaning. Because in one example, we can have the bratty teenager who wants to go to a party, but their parents won't let them, so they are calling their parents tyrants because they aren't getting to do what they want. Now, maybe the parents have a good reason for that. Maybe they don't trust who's at the party. Maybe there isn't someone responsible at the party. Maybe they don't know the people. Or maybe because the teenager is being a brat, they don't trust the teenager to actually be able to handle themselves at the party. So, again, there are kind of multiple things that could be going on there. And again, we then can have an example of, let's say, a mad scientist who is working in a lab, but every experiment they do tends to destroy a city block. So naturally, the authorities want the mad scientist to stop. But the mad scientist is like, why can't I do what I want? You're just tyrants trying to control me. So it's like, again, depending on someone's perspective, the word tyrant almost loses its meaning because it's pretty much a question of, I want to do what I want, why can't I? Or why aren't you letting me? When really, like, the authorities are trying to protect the people from the mad scientist's experiments. So again, it kind of, once we start to get to the fact that it's based on perspective, we can have a more general spectrum of who we're writing. And again, that again comes with the thing of freedom versus control, is that based on characters' perspectives on it, you did a more broad spectrum of different viewpoints and how they operate, and kind of spokespeople for each perspective or varying degrees of it. And so it just kind of fleshes out the story a bit more than just slotting them into, okay, these people good, these people bad. So again, by realizing that who is called a tyrant is often based on the perspective of the person doing the name calling in a sense, it kind of creates a different kind of perspective on things, because you kind of have actually a person who is naturally for their people, but isn't letting the criminal element doing what they want to call a tyrant by the criminal element. But it also lets you think of like the tragic villain in a sense, where someone is actually uniting the people against the common enemy, that being themselves, where basically they've seen like a threat that's coming or want to propel people to greater heights, but realize that the people would never unite through reason. So they're giving the people someone to hate themselves, basically offering themselves up as a sacrifice so that the people work together to either be strong enough to overcome a greater threat later on, or to actually work together for something. And so it's kind of like that example of a tragic villain who is doing something and maybe even playing to it extremely for the purpose of helping the people, and at least in their viewpoint. And again, you can kind of have that conflict of, does this person actually threat that we want to come together rationally, that we need to be almost forced to in a sense? So it kind of does have different ways of tweaking it a bit to create a more varied and fleshed out story and based on perspectives. Again, that's kind of like all the lives are perspectives, so why shouldn't characters have different perspectives on things? And something I want to get better at, rather than just having them be. Again, it's very easy to almost have characters speak to author or from the perspective of the author in a sense. So it's just sort of something that can trigger us to think differently and think of different perspectives, which actually help us relate to people more. But that's a sidetrack. But anyway, we also have the almost classic tyrant in a sense, comes from the belief that they are superior, that the people need to be ruled by them because for a reason they are better than them. And that's kind of where it's dangerous, is when the person has superiority, when the person in leadership sees himself as superior over their people. And really, you can kind of have that where it's a slow process, where they start to see kind of how the people are petty or whatever. So you can almost see the corruption into a tyrant if you wanted to do that kind of story. But it almost begins at the thinking of someone seeing themselves as better than the people they are supposedly supposed to serve. And again, I think that's kind of the key there, is that leadership is about serving the people rather than the people serving you. But at least that would be kind of like the good form of leadership. But then we can have the consequences of what happens when a tyrant is disposed of, because naturally having the tyrant as an antagonist means they'll probably be defeated. So you can have the consequence of someone worse taking the place of the tyrant. And now this may just be someone who is unprepared and unfit to lead, but they've just been thrust into the wall. Or you can have someone who was actually just as bad as a tyrant, but they didn't have the power. But now they have the power, so they're going to be a tyrant. And then this can also be because of power vacuum, where people are lobbying or fighting for control of stuff. So it's becoming chaotic just because there's no longer one figurehead, but now all the generals are fighting, and now the rebels are fighting, and whatever. But in a lot of this actually comes from probably one of the most dangerous phrases in existence, is that I'll do it better. And this is almost like the phrase that tells you a person does not learn from history. Because I've seen plenty of examples in real life where it's like an idea has failed multiple times, but yet you're choosing to keep doing it. It's like, as Edison said, I've learned so many ways to not build a light bulb. I only need one way to work. But it's oftentimes like the people are like, oh, we're better than it, and we're going to use the same ideas that have proven not to work over and over again. That's almost flawed in principle, naturally. Or getting rid of the things that are actually the only way it could work, in a sense. But this is kind of off topic, but it is like where people are basically convinced that they are superior to their ancestors, or have better knowledge, or are better capable, or more progressive, or more advanced than the people who've come before, then it kind of becomes dangerous, where they'll be like, I'll do it better. It's like, that is almost like the guarantee that they will do it almost worse or just as bad. And then it kind of does go back to that superiority thing, whereas someone who almost assumes that they are fit to lead or desiring of the power to lead is kind of the one person you don't actually want to lead. It's almost like the people who are generally not wanting to lead are the best leaders, because they actually almost understand the responsibilities that is asked for them in being that person who serves the people. Or it's like the people who won't desire it unless it actually gets thrust upon them, or because everybody else is just bad. It's it's kind of an interesting thing of how do you get that person to power who doesn't want it. But that's probably a subject for another video. But anyway, these are my thoughts on writing the tyrannical sort of character. So anyway, why not feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so that others may enjoy as well. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to our channel so that you can see more. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Made Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons learned from them. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.